You are listening to PowerScore's Featured Law Schools podcast series. Today's featured law school is the University of Virginia Law School. Currently ranked number 10 by the U.S. News & World Report, UVA Law has a total full-time enrollment of about 1,100 students and currently costs a little over $38,000 for full-time in-state students and a little over $43,000 for full-time out-of-state students. For the class that's graduating in 2012, from around 7,800 applicants, about 14% were accepted. Finally, when it came to the admission for that class, the median LSAT score was a 170, while the median GPA was a 3.85. Representing the University of Virginia Law School in our podcast today is Senior Assistant Dean of Admission Jason Trujillo and a 3L student, Chris Wimbush. Jason says that overall student satisfaction from UVA students and alumni make the school unique. Their alumni giving has been number 1 in the country, and he says that should show the dedication their alumni have to the program.
You know, I think there are a few things that separate us from many of our peers, and the one thing that I would highlight most is the overall student satisfaction with their law school experience. There is a lot of dissatisfaction in both law schools and the practice of law, and you don't often hear that from Virginia law students or Virginia alumni. The problem is it's really hard to measure that or back that statement up with any sort of facts. There's not a happiness quotient that we use. There's not a way of really accurately measuring that. I think the one thing that you can look at is alumni giving. And for the past 5 years, over 50% of Virginia law alumni have donated back to the law school in the form of annual giving, monetary donations back to the law school. And that is number 1 in the country, and it has been for as long as I can remember. The only other school, even in the 40s, I believe, is Yale, and everyone else, I believe, is below that. And so for a public school to have jumped all these other schools in alumni donations really says a lot about the student satisfaction and the alumni satisfaction with the law school. People are just not going to donate to a cause that they do not believe in, and I would submit that more Virginia alums believe in their law school than almost any other place in the country.
And when it comes to applying to UVA Law School, Jason says to take care of your application, make sure it's not sloppy, and know that every contact you have with the admission office is like a mini interview.
You know, there's a couple of things, and one thing that comes to mind most recently, I think, as applications have become easier and easier to submit, the care in which people have been putting together their application, I think, has been in decline. So I would say a couple of things, really. One is take care in your application. We see a number of just very sloppy applications, and that's a real turnoff. There is, if I can go back to one thing that makes Virginia law different than other schools, one thing that the dichotomy between the Virginians and the non-Virginians pool. So in the Virginia pool, we get about 5 applications for every Virginia seat in the first-year class. So 5 to 1 is competitive, but not insane. On the non-resident side, we are getting better than 35 applications for every non-resident seat in the entering class. So when there's 35 to 1, we are looking for reasons to just not take people. And one of the reasons that we often use is an application that is just thrown together and sloppy. And we're seeing that much more often. So I would say we don't do interviews, formal interviews. So everything that you submit ought to be crisp and clean and very precise, and we're just not seeing that as much anymore. Like I said, we don't have formal interviews, but every contact you have with our office is like a mini interview. So I can't tell you the number of times where somebody will call and talk to one of my assistants or one of our secretaries, and they'll be rude on the phone, or they'll exhibit some characteristic that we just don't find appropriate at Virginia law, and we just are not going to make that person an offer. So one piece of advice I have is to put a lot of time into your application, make sure it's very carefully done. And the second is any contact you have with a law school is a chance to make an impression, whether good or bad.
Jason suggests, like many other administrators and students, to visit their school and talk to professors and other students. He also notes that loving law school is not impossible.
Well, I would say first visit. There is you definitely want to get a feel of an institution. So you're going to be in law school for 3 years, but you're going to be associated with this law school for the rest of your professional life. Loving law school is not impossible, and you should definitely visit the law schools to which you've been admitted to find the law school in which you think you're going to be most happy. Because the reality is a lot of law schools, I think, can take you where you want to be, and you may as well try to enjoy it along the way. Now, how do you do that? Obviously, talk to as many professors as you can, talk to as many current students as you can, and certainly, and this is the one that's probably most overlooked, is talk to as many alumni as you can. You're going to be an alum of this law school much longer than you're going to be a student of the law school. And I would suggest talking to as many alumni as possible to talk about their experiences in the law school, and also what the law school has been able to do for them professionally.
He also notes that what makes his law school unique is the connection UVA has to the Supreme Court.
You know, one thing that I didn't talk about before is what makes our school a little bit different than other schools. We've gotten a lot of very good press lately about our connection to the Supreme Court. So we've done extremely well. The New York Times came out with a piece, I believe it was now maybe 2 months ago, which basically added up the number of clerks at the Supreme Court. And Virginia came in third over the periods of 2005 to 2010. Just behind Yale and Harvard, which is a very good company to be in. And for law school to be third in the nation with Supreme Court placements over 5 years, I think says a lot about our nexus with the court. And the other thing is our Supreme Court litigation clinic has had enormous success at the court. This year we're going to have 4 cases. Our clinic is going to have 4 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. I believe their docket is only going to be about 80 cases or so. So you're talking about 4 to 5% of the court's docket is going to have the University of Virginia Law School Clinic as the attorney of record in those arguments. And so the nexus to the court is something that I think if students are interested in that kind of thing, they should really explore Virginia.
And when it comes to the student body perspective of UVA Law School, Chris Wimbush, a third year, says the faculty and student interaction is his favorite aspect.
I think my favorite aspect of the law school thus far for me has been the faculty-student and the alumni-student interactions. I mean, a lot of schools have great, academic programs. A lot of schools have great buildings. A lot of schools have, great fellowships or things like that, career service departments. But I think what makes the place special is going to be the types of relationships you have with faculty. And I've always appreciated in the past year and a half the fact that there's so many, really accomplished people that are interested in how well we do. And so I have to say that's probably my favorite part so far.
Chris also says UVA is a special place because of its culture, and students aren't overly competitive.
I think Virginia is well known for its, sort of good-natured, softball, friendly type of place. And, I think that sometimes that's overstated. But I really do think it's a special place with respect to its culture, and I think that really contributes to student life and makes it a place where people can work together and not feel, overly competitive. I think the recession's made that a bit different. But at its core, I think people are still, just sort of nice people that like being around each other. And I think that's done great things for student life on campus.
And finally, Chris says to ask yourself where you will be happy when choosing a law school. He says you need to find a place where you will mesh with the people and feel supported. 2 things he says he's found at the University of Virginia Law School.
The primary consideration is just where you're going to be happy. I think if you're playing in if you're looking at schools like UVA, you probably have pretty good choices, across the board. And I think that, when you're considering where you're going to spend 3 years doing something that's particularly difficult, as the study of law is, you should find a place where you mesh with the people, that you like the environment, and that you'll have people that are supporting you. And I think those are the most important factors in picking a school. And I think with respect to Virginia in particular, Charlottesville and the law school are great places to spend 3 years physically. I think between career services and academic support and faculty, there are definitely people that are rooting for you during your 3 years. And I think there are good people here. But those are definitely the 3 things that I would looked at when I was trying to find a school.
Thank you for listening to PowerScore's podcast series. If you want more information on PowerScore's podcasts and services, please visit PowerScore.com. Or you can call 1-800-545-1750.